All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Post Game Podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. My guest today is a former NFL quarterback with the Minnesota Vikings, Oakland Raiders, Denver Broncos, and San Francisco 49ers. He played his college football for the Florida State Seminoles under Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher and was drafted 12th overall in the 2011 NFL Draft. He retired in 2016 and started down the wealth management path, but missed that competition and community aspect to the locker room. He recently founded The Post, which is an invite-only leadership network for athletes to come together, post-playing career, and make that transition from sports to business. His name is Christian Ponder. So really cool talking to Christian and just appreciated his time. A little bit of what we talk about are the expectations of an NFL first-round draft pick, some performance anxiety that Christian dealt with throughout his career, and then that transition out of the NFL, you know, how he found his footing, the path that he started down, and then realized it wasn't the one that he really should be on, and then ultimately ended up with how he founded The Post. So, Christian, thanks for the time. It was really cool getting the chance to meet you and just have you on. And I'm sure anybody listening in, especially former athletes, can relate to your story. So please enjoy this conversation with Christian Ponder. All right, we're live here with Christian Ponder. The Post Game Podcast meets The Post. So, Christian,
good.
Yeah, there you go. I appreciate you joining, man. Seriously, it's you're generous with your time here. So, just looking forward to diving into your story and hearing about The Post.
Yeah, of course, Joe. Thanks for having me on. And obviously, a lot of synergies between what we're up to at The Post and what this whole platform that you've created in this podcast is all about.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. So Christian, the place that I wanted to start is kind of your upbringing. And I know you grew up in a huge football family. Texas football is a religion.
Yeah.
And I read, I was doing some digging. I read an article, a little bit about your dad. And it was, I think you sprained an ankle or something in a high school football game.
Yeah.
And
did not go
maybe you can take it from there. Just like it speaks to your dad and your upbringing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, grew up outside of Dallas. Football was, obviously very intense culture at the high school level in the state of Texas. My dad played football. He grew up in rural Georgia. Was the first one in his family to go to school because he got a scholarship offer to go play at Florida State. Was a defensive lineman, and obviously very passionate about the game of football. What the game of football gave him as this outlet to go build a new life outside of where he grew up and get a college education. And I would not be where I am today without my father and how he pushed me to be the best version of myself. And he saw things in me that, he wanted to unlock as much of that potential they had. But, that was not without pushing us extremely hard. And yeah, that story, we were playing, it was my senior year in high school. We were playing Denton Ryan, who was tremendously talented. And we were by far the underdogs, and we were, in it from the vast majority of the game. And kind of midway through the fourth quarter, I had a pretty bad high ankle sprain and stayed on the field after play because I knew nothing was broken, but tried to stay on the field, took a snap, went to go hand the ball off, and just I couldn't put any weight on my ankle, and basically, stayed on the ground, came off the field, and my dad came out of the stands, assuming something was broken. And he's, what's broken? What's going on? And they say, no, he just has a high ankle sprain. And we'll just, it looks like he probably can't play the rest of the game. And, he obviously is not happy with the fact that, I think, his upbringing with his coach, I think he always brought up the line of his high school coach in Georgia was like, if I don't see a bone sticking out, then you'd be on the field. And so that's the mindset that he brought to the table. And I think especially understanding kind of the critical concept, we were in the red zone, critical part of the game and a critical part of the field. And I was coming out as the leader of the team. And so was disappointed in the fact that I did not have a bone sticking out of my body, and yet I still was not going to play the rest of that game. And but that was he pushed as hard. And again, I mean, my would not have achieved the things that I achieved as a football player, or even outside of that, without not only my dad believing in me, but pushing me to be the best that I could be.
Oh yeah. And there's something to be said, man, kind of about that old school dad, right? That's just like, dude, if it's not broken, get back in the game, like suck it
Yeah.
up. So yeah, that kind of sets the stage. I mean, obviously, it seemed like you were a little bit of late bloomer almost in football, at least maybe in high school, and then you kind of flourished later in your high school career, and obviously had the opportunity to go to Florida State. But I was reading even at your early career in Florida State, it looked like it wasn't all like an easy path, right? You maybe think about transferring at one point. Is that right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I grew up very much like a baseball kid. Like I loved baseball. First time I played pee wee football, I hated it. Mainly because I wanted to be the quarterback, and at that age, it's like coach's son is quarterback. I was kind of a taller kid, so like they made me a tight end, but at that age, tight end is really just a six offensive lineman. My coach was a complete jerk, and just made it a terrible experience. So I actually quit halfway through the season. Did not like it. Middle school football rolls around, and even in the state of Texas, like middle school football is a pretty big deal. I'm like, all right, I want to play football again. Want to be the quarterback. I end up being the initially the backup A team quarterback, and then they moved me down to B team to be the starting B team quarterback, and also starting even on the A team in seventh grade. I was starting on defense, and at cornerback, and then when I got to the B team, I was starting quarterback and corner. And yeah, I think I was always kind of the underdog in that story. Eighth grade, I made the A team, but I was the backup quarterback, starting corner. The quarterback ahead of me, his name was Darnold Markley, was a pretty good athlete. And when we got to freshman in high school, uh, they just wanted him to be on the field. So actually moved him receiver. I think with the assumption they'd move him back to quarterback, but that gave me the opportunity to put him on the varsity team. That gave me the opportunity to be the starting quarterback on the freshman team. Really developed some confidence and some experience around being a freshman on the freshman team. Then I was the starter on the JV A team, and then my junior year, it was interesting because the junior varsity coach was not the same coach as the varsity coach, and we ran a very different offense than what the varsity team ran, and I think really built it around my strengths as a throwing quarterback and an athletic quarterback, and then when I made that jump to varsity as a junior to start as the varsity quarterback, we're very much like a wing T offense, like barely threw the ball, and just were not to my strengths. And yeah, just didn't play well. I had a lot of turnovers, but had enough on tape that I made some great throws. And so my dad basically scrapped together highlight tape all on his own, made a DVD out of it, sent it to 120 D1 colleges to just get my name out there. No one was recruiting me before that. I did not have a great junior year. And had a good enough highlight tape that started getting some letters. My first offer came, I think in February. I remember I was sitting in the weight room, and my head coach delivered me a letter from University of North Carolina, and it was like my first official scholarship offer. And I think there's something about that like, hey, when someone has a belief in you, like University of North Carolina believing that I could play at the college level, like I got a new level of confidence in myself. And I think that kept growing and growing. And spring football was a big deal in Texas. Had a great spring camp. High school, did a bunch of summer camps at different universities. Ended up giving 26 D1 scholarship offers to go play, including Florida State, which was the school I wanted to play at because both my parents went there. Again, my dad played there, but when I got to college, it again was, originally they told me I was going to be the only quarterback in the high school class. I ended up getting another quarterback late, and was a bit of an athlete. I felt like they showed some favoritism towards him, and just had a tough freshman year, and felt like I was definitely like the fifth guy on the depth chart, and didn't see a future there for me. And we had a tough year that year. I think we went 6-6 or 7-6, 7-5, and barely made a bowl game, and ended up firing the whole offensive staff and brought in a new staff, which included Jimbo Fisher. And I thought, like, okay, this is a fresh start. And And everyone kind of started off at a clean slate at an equal level with Coach Fisher coming in, because not knowing other than the two guys that had kind of gone back and forth as starters and had some history playing. Everyone else was kind of at a clean slate and out to prove themselves, and had a really great first camp with Jimbo as our offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and made an impression. Which was funny at first. He came in. I remember coming in the lunchroom and I introduced myself, and he's like, "Oh, what position you play?" Like, didn't you? I was one. He was like my new quarterback coach, and didn't know who I was. And but I remember I had a great first practice with him and made a first impression, and I think that always stood out. And was the third string quarterback. The first two guys had again alternated as starters, and one of those guys got suspended my redshirt freshman year, and I got elevated to the second string quarterback, and then our starter got hurt in the game, and I got thrown out in the fire against Virginia Tech on a Thursday night primetime game, and played well. And that was kind of how I got my foot in the door to become the starter at Florida State. And yeah.
So how did Jimbo Fisher instill confidence in you then?
I think I earned the confidence in my own self through my own preparation and work ethic. But I think he saw, and whether he actually saw or whether he was trying to use it as a motivation tool for the guys who were ahead of me of hey, this young guy is looking good. I don't know. I remember he, the local kind of beat writer he had, I think that after that first practice with him, he actually called me up by name and said, "Hey, you know what really impressed me today was Christian Ponder." And I was like, okay, who is that? But I think, yeah, hearing that from him, and I was so excited when he was coming because I knew what he had done at LSU and with some Jamarcus Russell and all these great quarterbacks that he had at LSU at the time. Was excited to learn from him as my new coach, and I think to hear that I had impressed him. I think he pushed us tremendously hard. I mean, he always said, look, his job was to make practice so much harder on the quarterbacks than games, so you were prepared for the game. And he was hard. He was, there's a lot of similar characteristics to how my dad coached me and pushed me. It was a great balance of both building you up, in the quarterback room, and hey, I think you can make a lot of money at this game. I think you can be one of the best players that come through this program. But in order for you to get there, you got to work harder than anybody else. You've got to do these things to prepare. And but I think that kind of that external confidence builder and him telling you, basically speaking it into existence in who you are, really built a lot of confidence in me.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like he built a lot of trust with you guys too.
Yeah.
You mentioned
absolutely.
Preparation. You might have just mentioned it 5-6 times just in that, right? Just right with what you said, and how that breeds confidence.
Yeah.
So you're a first rounder. You're an NFL first rounder. I didn't do enough research to know how many first rounders there are in the history of the NFL draft, but I mean, it's an elite group. So 12th overall pick. I was curious. You replaced Brett Favre, right?
Yeah. So Brett was there the year before me. He had some injuries, so it was I think he got hurt halfway through that year before me, and it was Joe Webb and Tavares Jackson were kind of the quarterbacks. But yes, basically Brett was the few year starter before I came to town.
Right. Okay. So he was, and there was a few others, because I was going to ask you if you felt added pressure. I mean, obviously there's pressure coming in as a first rounder to begin with. You have a whole city on your back, and it's not Minneapolis is a diehard sports town, but it's not Philadelphia. It's not New York, but you still went through your trials and tribulations. But just if you could take me through what you were feeling maybe at that point, and if you were feeling pressure, or what you were feeling.
I definitely was. Oh, I definitely was. And I think, the way I could feel the weight of expectation, and especially because, some people viewed me as being overdrafted. And so there was not only the weight of being a first round draft pick, but also proving my worth of these people are already kind of against me because they think I didn't deserve that. And so feeling kind of even more pressure. I think what complicated was, my junior year at Florida State, I had a really great year. Was actually going to turn pro probably after my junior season, except I think it was the ninth or 10th game of the year. We were playing Clemson, and week before, basically, I broke my ribs. Didn't practice all week. Was uncertain if I was going to play. It was a game time decision. Decided I wanted to play. Was not mentally prepared for that game. I mean, going back to preparation, just because of my uncertainty on whether I was going to play, I did not prepare myself to play. But start off well. I mean, I think I threw two, 3 touchdowns in the first half of that game. We're winning on the road in Death Valley as a Saturday night primetime game. And but I didn't come out, end up throwing 3 picks in that game, and last interception of the game was going to be a pick 6 unless I went and tackled the guy, and I was so mad. My pride kicked in and tried to go hit this 235-pound safety as hard as I could, and ended up injuring my shoulder, 3rd-degree AC joint separation, have surgery that ends my season on my throwing shoulder. And I really, I just never felt like I threw the football the same. And I had this confidence beforehand. I just felt like, obviously I would miss some throws. I was never perfect, but I always had the confidence that I wouldn't miss, and I just trusted my arm and my ability as a quarterback. And I think after that injury, I just never felt the same. And so I think that slight lack of confidence in myself, on top of the added pressure of being a first-round draft pick and someone who was thought to be overdrafted, it was hard. It was hard for me, and really, especially, I think anything that you do, any sport that you play, any position, but especially quarterback, if you are not confident in your abilities, you're always going to be playing from behind. And I was not confident. I dealt with a lot of anxiety, and it had an effect on how I played on the field.
Man, so during that time, did you talk I mean, not see a therapist, but did you work with mental performance coaches or sports psychologists? I guess it wasn't
no,
prevalent at that time, right?
It wasn't. And look, I wish I would have. I I'd always had some playing anxiety, some, the butterflies. I wish, would have talked through some of that, because I remember every first play, I would be so tremendously nervous, and then you get in the flow of the game and it goes away and it's fine. But I probably wish I would have at least talked to someone through that. But I think especially when you get to the NFL, you don't know who to trust. It's to admit, hey, I have an anxiety problem, or I have, to admit that I don't feel like I'm throwing the ball as well as I used to. That's tough to say that when you have a $1 million contract, and so I didn't know who to go to or who to talk to, and so no, I did not talk to anybody about this, and obviously I wish I would have, because it probably would have helped me.
And by saying that now, and by the way, I didn't know we were going to kind of go that direction, but just by saying that now, I'm sure that because everybody experiences that. I don't know. I mean, I experienced that at a totally different level, obviously, but anybody who goes through sports, I think you experience that at a certain point, and then the second doubt creeps in, like you were saying, you're probably cooked. So yeah.
Well, and I think, look, I did a lot of work on myself after the fact of I've always had some social anxiety or performance anxiety, and I wish I would have done the work, because it all has a root cause, right? And that root cause is obviously proving we talk about, a chip on my shoulder, but that chip on the shoulder is some sort of insecurity that we possess that's rooted in some sort of experience or something that we're trying to prove. And I think really what mine was rooted in was the approval of my dad, right? He was really hard on me, and he'd be the guy that was yelling out over the fence when I was striking out as a 3rd grader in baseball. And so my performance anxiety was I've got to prove my worth to my dad. And obviously he would say, no, that's not the case. And he loves me unconditionally. But to earn that respect and his pride of me performing well, his son being the best one on that team. And that crept into having to prove everyone in the stands at Florida State and in Minnesota, anywhere else, of I am valuable enough to earn your respect. And so, and now as a leader in business of same thing, how do I earn the respect of my peers, my coworkers, our team, and having anxiety of needing to deliver to earn that relationship or earn that friendship or that respect. And so, my root cause was that. And I wish I would have done some work of look, my dad loves me regardless of how I play. You don't need to feel this anxiety to go prove your worth on every play or every game. And I think everyone needs to do that work. If you're feeling anxiety, figure out what that root cause is. What are you trying to prove? How are you trying to earn your worth? And do some work there, I think is helpful.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Does that impact then how you parent your kids these days?
It is, yeah. And it's hard. It's a hard balance. I have three kids, 10, 7, 6. They're
Yeah.
kind of in the early stages of their sports careers. What is the balance of pushing them hard and letting them work hard and experience? Hey, preparation, work ethic leads to growth and better performance. And um, how do you push them, but not push them too much? How do you not make them think that their performance dictates your relationship? Um, So definitely, I feel like I'm hyper aware. I think as parents we tend to overcompensate for things, and so it's like I don't want to overcompensate and go to the other side, like everything's great and perfect
Right.
and like whatever. So it's like where is that balance of encouraging and building confidence, but continue to push them and I haven't perfected that. I still think I'm figuring that out, but I feel like I'm definitely more self aware around those things in my relationships with my kids, especially through sports.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, man. And so there's balance with everything, right? So
Yeah.
so you had a relatively short NFL career, right? After being a first rounder, and you had I think it was a really good 2012 season, right? And like nobody's ever going to be able to take away the fact that you're a first rounder, you played in the NFL. But then you decided, I think you may have had some opportunities maybe to play. I don't know if it was the CFL or just other opportunities, and you decided to walk away when you probably still could have played. So I was just wondering why'd you make that decision? Because it's a tough line to
Yeah.
walk, I think, between like quitting, and you mentioned that too with quitting. I think whatever it was, a middle school football team, but like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
line between quitting and then sticking it out. It's always something I
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah. So my last year was 2016 with the 49ers. I had offers from two separate NFL teams to go to camp and be on that team. Um, it was just a different stage in life for me. And I think again, playing with this, at that point, like, my anxiety performance anxiety could continue to build and build. And like, obviously didn't play well enough in Minnesota during the second contract, go to the Oakland Raiders, get cut after training camp. Um, and didn't get a lot of calls after that. I ended up signing with Denver for a couple weeks after Peyton Manning got hurt during that season. Got a call from the Cincinnati Bengals when I think Andy Dalton got hurt that season. This would have been the 2015 season to go play, but like I turned it down because I had so much performance anxiety of like I just didn't enjoy playing because I was just so stressed and nervous. And yeah, and so I think I had a great time in San Francisco. Really enjoyed Chip Kelly and my experience with a tremendous organization. I think if Chip would have stayed, I would have stayed with the 49ers. My family enjoyed living in the Bay Area. We had a great time there. When Chip got fired after I think we went 2-14 that year, and obviously they brought in Kyle Shanahan, it's hard to argue that wasn't really the wrong decision because they've done tremendously well. It was a stage of life where my oldest was born, my second was on the way. Do I want to be the journeyman quarterback who's new team, new city every year, moving my family? I didn't want to commit to that lifestyle, especially with something that I no longer really enjoyed, and provide a lot of stress and anxiety in my life. And no, of course, I wish that wasn't that way. I wish I would have done the work to figure out like why I'm feeling this way, and I would have loved to have. Number one, look, I would have obviously wished I had a much better career in Minnesota and would have stayed there for long term and had much more success. But then after that, just really done the work of like getting over that side of myself and dealing with that anxiety, and I probably would have had a longer career. But I think it was I don't regret making the mistake of walking away because it was the right decision at that time. I do have regrets of like I should have gone to Cincinnati and not been scared to go play, but it was, yeah, stage of life I was in. I didn't want to move my family around, and so that was the biggest reason why I hung it up.
Yeah, that stage of life, man. Yeah, I mean that's the decision. Whatever decision you made was the right one at that time, right? Just with the
Yeah,
information that you had and where you were. I
yeah,
maybe just one more football question because it kind of ties into what you're just saying before. I want to talk about your like pursuing wealth management and then obviously the post. But have you talked to Sam Darnold at all? I don't know if you like have any.
I've
No,
not. I have
I was
not. Obviously, I've
wondering
been I've
about.
been watching.
Yeah,
He's off to a tremendous start. Look, I think so much. of any position, but especially the quarterback position, is you've got to find the right system. You got to find the right situation. I mean, the Jets have been a mess. Carolina has clearly been a mess. It's hard to win. It's been hard to win in both of those places, and so he was always fighting an uphill battle, and dealing with a lot of pressure, trying to prove his worth. Gets to go to San Francisco, take a step back and kind of a break, learn from Kyle Shanahan, and enjoy the successful culture that they've built there. I'm sure he rebuilt his confidence, and now you can tell like he was a top 5 pick. Like he's tremendously talented. I think it goes back to rebuilding that confidence and finding the right situation. There's a ton of talent around him. Their defense is playing really well, and I think super happy for Sam. I don't know him personally. I've never talked to him, but excited for what he's accomplishing and for the Vikings to really. I know, when JJ McCarthy went down, I'm sure a lot of people reacted in a negative way, but Sam's proving his worth and showing that he's a top 5 talent, and great for him.
Yeah, man, stepped right in. It's insane how, because then you see a guy like Bryce Young who's in Carolina, just like a dumpster fire, and you got to think that his confidence is in the dumps. I'm sure, right? So
for sure, and right, it's such a weird cycle now with first round quarterbacks. You really have a year, 2 years to prove that you're the guy. And usually, if you're drafting 1 overall, your team is in a bad situation, right? So now all this pressure is on basically this rookie quarterback to change everything, every aspect of the team and become successful. And very few guys have been able to overcome that challenge, right? Like Andrew Luck was able to do it in Indianapolis, and obviously he chose to walk away. RG3 had success early on and then just got beat down physically, and it was tough to overcome that. And Cam Newton did it in Carolina, made it to Super Bowl, was an MVP, but like I can't remember what the stat was, but there was like a stat of like so few NFL quarterbacks drafted in the first round after like the 2009 season. It was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 of 20 or so people that were still on the same team they were drafted by. And, it's just, you got to find the right system. You got to have a great defense who's going to take the pressure off of you. You've got to have, your style of play has to fit that coordinator. You have to have people around. You have a great offensive line. Otherwise, you're going to get beat up and you're going to lose your confidence. And it's hard to maintain that. I mean, Bryce is the perfect example. I mean, he was tremendous at Alabama and walked into a tough situation. And, I hope that he can take a step back, rebuild that confidence, maybe find a different situation that is a better fit for him. But, it's hard.
Yeah, there's so much nuance in quarterback position, which I don't know. I'll never be able to appreciate it because I was a baseball guy too. But it's just nuts. So,
yeah.
All right. So anyway, since you've hung him up and like your business career is going to be, well, most people's, pretty much everybody's is going to be significantly longer than their playing career.
Yeah.
And the part of your story that's interesting to me is like you thought you knew what you were going to do. You get your MBA in 2.5 years, like you're cruising wealth management. And then you were just feeling something inside where you're just like, this just isn't it for me.
Yeah. So I got my undergrad in finance, got my MBA at Florida State. My dad's been in the financial world for a while. I think I assume that's where I wanted to spend my time, and moved to New York City, started down that path. It just didn't feel like it was a great fit for me. I was not excited to get out of bed in the morning and work in that industry. And that was just, my personal fit. Obviously, like everyone's different, and people found a lot of success and enjoyment in that industry, and great. It just personally was not a fit for me. Called a few college football games for ESPN, got into business development on a small hedge fund in New York City. So, it was just basically going through this, like trying different stuff out and see what I was passionate about. Got into angel investing, got into entrepreneurship, venture capital world. But it was through that time where, that I, and we were talking about it before we kind of started this conversation, but like, I knew before transitioning out that it was going to be difficult for me, at least just from a social standpoint, right? The community, the athlete community has been the community I've been a part of for so long. It's a huge part of my identity, how I operate. When you're in sports, you're surrounded by people who are obviously like you. It's where my closest friends have always come from, the people I have the most in common with, the people I just enjoy being around the most. And you have such a tight-knit community that you're a part of and have access to every day when you're in sports. And suddenly you just have to walk away from that. So I knew walking away after the 2016 season that I was now no longer going to be a part of this community, and that was going to be difficult for at least just from a social standpoint. It really wasn't until I entered the corporate world where I realized how different that environment is and how different athletes operate, and the athlete mindset and what we've kind of called it the post-athlete operating system. Like athletes are just uniquely wired. We go through very unique experiences throughout our practices, our seasons, our off seasons that a lot of people don't experience in their lifetime. And it develops a certain level of or set of soft skills, the work ethic, the grittiness, the competitiveness, the drive, the ambition, the accountability, the discipline, the list goes on and on, all these intangibles. From a behavioral science standpoint, we're so influenced by the people we closely surround ourselves with. And obviously, when you're in sports, you're so closely surrounded by people that are defined by those characteristics. And moving into the corporate world, a lot of people did not have that long list of characteristics. It was, it's you can work too hard in the corporate world. People don't like feedback. Not everyone. A lot of people don't like feedback. People are threatened by your ambition sometimes, and it's not about the team, and oftentimes, and the athlete meeting had such a hard time assimilating into this new culture that I was just not used. It was very different than the sports ecosystem. And, I think it was hard for me to accept that as my new status quo. And it made me miss the athlete community more and more, and being around like-minded individuals and high-performing individuals. And, by the way, also there's all this data coming out that shows the outperformance of former college athletes against the general population when it comes to performance in business and leadership. Some of the statistics, 94% of women in the C-suite were athletes at some point in their life, but 52% of women in the C-suite were college athletes. 15 of the last 21 U.S. presidents were college athletes. An outsized number of Fortune 500 CEOs are college athletes, and college athletes only make up roughly 1.5% of the U.S. population. So that's a tremendous statistical disparity against people who were not college athletes. And so I think society's viewed college athletes for so long as this liability of like, hey, we only went to school because we were athletes. We got a scholarship. You wasted so much time, and people were getting internships in college, and they started off their business careers a lot earlier than some of these professional athletes have, and so you're just a step behind. But what we've called the athlete operating system, these intangibles, it shows that it's just such a massive competitive advantage to go perform really well. We persevere through hard times. Like we get over losses, we learn from losses. We use that as motivation, not as a demoralizer, where so many other people like can't close a sales call and they're down in the dumps for a month. And so we see this as this unique gifting to continue to leverage and continue to invest in. Like, go be an athlete in business, go be an athlete as a spouse, go be an athlete as a parent, because you're bringing so many things to the table that are really a competitive advantage and an asset. So how do you surround yourself with people who are still defined by that athlete mindset, that operating system, that continue to influence you in a positive way and you influence them in a positive way? As athletes, we benefited so greatly from being on teams, that accountability, that support system of a team in the locker room. And so we want to build, how do we recreate that same accountability and support and ecosystem that we benefited so greatly from in our own growth as athletes in sports, for our same benefit as athletes in business. And that was all inspiration from the Post. That's what we did. And we launched a little over a year ago, and it's been off to a good start.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's almost like because you figured out from such a young age that you were either good or just like really wanted to do this one thing, and it almost ends up backfiring. Not for everybody, like you said. Some people can just jump right into it and they're like, all right, we're just going to apply the same stuff, but it's not always the case. So yeah, it's just interesting what you're saying. But
well, yeah, and I think, look, the transition's hard for everyone. Like, and I thought I had my crap together, right? Like MBA, knew what I wanted to do, but like as I went through it and struggled, the four things that I boiled it down to that makes the transition hard for everybody is kind of the four losses. So a loss of sense of identity, right? You've been an athlete your whole life. Suddenly, it feels like that chapter of your life is over. A loss of sense of purpose, especially as a guy who grew up in the state of Texas where like football is your purpose, and then going to play D1 ball. It's like, everything that we did, we went to school to stay eligible to play sports. We treated our bodies well. We worked out. Like everything we did was for the purpose of being the best athlete that we could be. And obviously, if your purpose is the sport itself and that sport ends, then your purpose feels like it ends. And that's bad. Like we should not. Your sense of purpose should not come from playing sports. Like you should have a greater purpose on why you're playing sports. But a loss of identity, loss of purpose or sense of purpose, a loss of structure and routine, right? Like when you're in sports, you have your hand held in so many different ways. Hey, here's your classes. Here's when you need to work out. We're gonna feed you. When you walk in the room, hey, here's your workout. Like our schedule, our routines were all structured for us in around our sport. And we thrived in structure, and suddenly you're kind of kicked to the curb and you have to create structure, and those are not muscles that you've necessarily built up to create your own structure. And so you lose that part of it as well. And the last one was loss of community. Again, you have the team, the locker room, this really being a part of something, and suddenly the doors to that community are closed and you're off on your own. And communities built on commonality, the boundaries of community or commonality. And so suddenly you've got to go find kind of a new tribe to belong to and community to be a part of. And that's hard. And so that's for us. It's like, how do we solve those four things through the post? But I think that's for me, that was my personal story. Those are the things that I struggled with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it all makes sense. So then practically speaking, you're working at the hedge fund and then I'm sure you had this idea for the post for a while. Are you you were in like the Soho house, probably hanging around some people drinking some $30 martini.
Yeah.
But like, how did you actually get it started? Like, I'm sure your network was built up. Yeah. But how'd you start?
Yeah. So exactly. So I had this void, right, that I was sensing, like I need to belong to something, find my tribe, start joining Soho House. For those who don't know Soho House, it's a private members club started in London originally for people in the creative arts industries. Now they have a bunch of these clubhouses. It's a bar, lounge space. Some have hotel. I think actually all of them probably have hotels attached to them. They're these beautiful spaces, but obviously you pay money to be a member and you have exclusive access. And that was one thing I joined some other clubs and looked at some networks around and outside of New York City to fill that void for me. And I was sitting in 2019 one day in Soho House thinking, hey, this place is beautiful. This place is cool. I love the idea. I just don't belong. I don't fit in here. Like the creative people, like they're great. It's their own community. Like I don't have a whole lot in common with them. I'm an athlete. Will always be an athlete. Those are my people. And start thinking like, look, if all these people in here were athletes, like that would feel like home to me. That would give me something to belong to and fill that void. And so that's where it started. Didn't do much with that idea for a while. COVID happens, gives me a lot more time to start thinking about this idea. And so the initial thing that I did was like starting to validate it. Like, am I the only one that feels like it's a good idea, or are there other people that feel like it's a good idea? So start talking to athletes, former athletes who gave a tremendous amount of validation. Okay, like have that from a customer base. It's going to take a lot of capital to bring this. I have some money, but I'm not going to put all my money in this idea. So start talking to potential investors, people who are in membership spaces. Like, hey, is there a business idea behind this? And yeah, got an extreme amount of validation, and enough that we actually become incubated by an early stage venture fund in New York City. Basically, incubation is they wrote us the initial capital. They helped brand us, helped us walk through a business plan. I mean, it was just me as the only founder at the time, but helped create this idea, give it structure. We researched all these, Soho houses to professional networks, and really try to come up with like what is this idea for community for athletes, but what does it manifest into? And so raise a little money, come up with a name, the post, general business plan. I realize I have this idea. I know the problem really well. I know the customer really well, but I have no real operational business experience. I have no idea really how to continue to push this business forward. And just like every team, right? Like every position on every team fills a gap, and you work together to fill those gaps and build a team that is successful. And I had gaps from a business operational side. And so I had to go find someone to be my teammate to fill those gaps for me. And that person was Jason Rose. Jason was the former president of Under Armour in North America. Mm-hmm. Went to Equinox Gyms, which is a fitness chain, luxury fitness chain. Built out their digital product, and originally talked to him as a potential advisor, potential investor. He loved the idea. I was like, "Hey, Christian, I want to help you build this," and was instrumental in getting it off the ground and coming up with a great business plan, more solid business plan. Then we raised out our initial seed capital to bring this to life. Got some great investors on the cap table to help us, and and then it basically took off from there. We continued to build out our team, and then we launched. We basically went from raising our seed round, closing that in February of 22, to basically a year of building behind the scenes and studying all these organizations, and then we launched April 2023.
It's great what you're doing, man. I love it. What's been the biggest challenge?
Look, I think every entrepreneur's journey is a challenge, right? I think bringing something to life. I think we have a very niche customer base, so how do we get ourselves in front of those types of people is a challenge. Every day is a grind. It is exhausting. It is exhausting. I think obviously the value I see to it. I mean, we've heard countless stories of how this is having such a positive influence on so many people's lives. Like, that's what keeps us pushing to keep pushing forward. We know this needs to exist, and will have such a positive influence on this specific community. But yeah, it's all, especially early stage company, finding the right teammates. Like, some people are great fits for certain stages, and then you've got to make some changes, and those are always tough conversations. But we've had to do that a few times, and raising capital is always hard, especially in the environment of the last 2 years that has made kind of early stage companies. It's just a lot different of a fundraising environment. And but yeah, I mean, I think especially, and also, like, this is a lot of this is new to me. I've never saw myself as an entrepreneur before I became an entrepreneur.
That's
what
I was going to
learning on the fly.
Yeah. Because the path is, I mean, it never really goes as planned, but like, you had a very structured path, and now you're an entrepreneur. Like, you're in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think about that when, like, because it seemed like, I don't know. It seemed like you weren't risky per se, but you knew what you really loved, and your first round draft, all this stuff. But I don't know. That's what kind of where I'm going.
Drinking from a fire hose, learning as you go. Again, finding people to fill the void for me, the gaps that I don't know. So I have a tremendous team on my side that's helping this. So that takes a lot of the pressure and stress. You've got to surround yourself with a great team, and I've been fortunate to do that. I've benefited also from a wife who's taken on the breadwinner role of, like, our family, right? So, like, you make no money as a startup founder. That's a fact of life. So, like, it's not for everybody. I've had a interesting situation where my wife worked at ESPN, or at least did until recently. Has been the breadwinner for our family, which has given me the flexibility to pursue this as a full-time job. And so that was a very unique situation for me. And look, that's going to have to change at some point. Like, this has to be supportive of the things that I want to accomplish in my personal life. But for the time being, it's allowed us the flexibility to, reduce our burn from not having to pay I make no money from this. And so supporting our team and the initiatives that we, the experience that we're providing to our members. So I benefit from that situation as well.
Sure. What's like the long-term plan then for the Post? I mean, obviously keep growing, and at some point maybe you'll have to raise more money, but what are you thinking about that?
Look, high level, right? My whole vision is, how do we make this just the continuation of the athlete story? We kind of see ourselves as athletes through when we hang up our cleats or our playing days, and then you have to transition into something else. And, like, for us, it's just, you hang up your cleats, and then you go be an athlete in business, and your locker room and your team is the Post. We don't want people to shed that identity, because we see this as this major competitive advantage, this strength that we should continue to give to companies, to give to, our organizations. And especially it feels like there's somewhat of a leadership crisis out there right now. And soft skills I think the disparity between people who've developed soft skills through sports and people who've not been through those types of experiences are going to continue to grow and grow. And so we think we're going to have such a positive influence on the future of leadership across all industries and organizations. And we hope that, we're there to continue to support them. In terms of more granular, like, look, we have 500 members across country. Our average age member is 38 years old. Over 60% of our members are VP level and above in business. Pretty much touch every industry and roll out there. There's definitely a network effect that we want to continue to get to and make this a really powerful network. The things that we look at, people apply. We look at business career athletic career. We score both of them. There's kind of a cumulative score that needs to be reached for us to invite them to be a part of it. Or really, it basically goes from flagging an interview or an applicant that we think would be great. I talk to everybody that we flag. I'm kind of the last filter of, hey, we would love these people to be a part of it. I think there's a network effect as we continue to grow this with the right people. It's the intersection of sports and business, or being an athlete and business. We want to keep growing. And I think one of those initiatives, we want to have chapters, high density chapters in every major city. We have 150 people in New York City. Everyone else is kind of spread throughout the country. So really growing these local chapters. We love to have an internal incubator with the Post. We believe in athletes as founders. There's so much crossover between entrepreneurship and sports. So can we incubate athlete-founded companies, help them get off the ground, take an ownership stake in them, have an investment fund? We'd love to have a platform for athletes in transition. It's not what we initially focused on. I think we will solve that issue because of what we focused on from the beginning, which is building the idea of that veteran locker room, right? When you were a freshman at Seton Hall, you stepped into a team locker room that had juniors and seniors on that team that know what it takes to compete and be successful at that level. Same thing when I was at Florida State or rookie in the NFL, you walk in the locker room with guys who are 8th, 9th, 10th year of their career, and you learn from them. You watch them, you learn from osmosis, you build relationships with them. And same thing here, like, okay, I'm a young athlete transitioning out. I can go be a part of this locker room at the Post, build relationships who are further along in their business careers, learn from how they've transitioned. And these people value what I'm bringing to the table. Is, as a former athlete, we've had executives say, I want to hire these people. So we would love to go build out a talent platform, hiring platform for athletes in transition. And, we also see that, like, the United States is not the only sporty country out there. We've had people already apply. We have members in Canada. We have people who apply from South America, Europe, Australia, Africa. We could go make this a global community to be a part of. We'd love to go build out 30 clubhouses across the U.S., have some international locations as well. So I guess I did clubhouse. We have a physical space in New York City that we call our clubhouse. It's a bar lounge space. Is kind of that nod to Soho House where we have a 4-wall space. People work here during the day. We love social events here. People come and watch football on Saturdays. We'd love to go build these 4-wall spaces across the country. And but yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that we want to go do, but it's really about giving that accountability and support that we miss so much as athletes.
Yeah, there's so much, like you're saying, there's so much that you can do and so much opportunity. Yeah. It's got to be tough, just like keeping your on a day-to-day basis. Like, all right, how can we not just totally put the cart in front of the horse versus like, all right, we got to tackle this thing. I mean, everybody has that issue, but
for sure, yeah, and it's especially like an early stage company, we don't have a lot of budget for these initiatives initially, right? So it's like you gotta kind of hit your milestones, and then look, we'd love to go raise some capital in the next year and launch a lot of these bigger initiatives and build more clubhouses, and that's where we want to get to. But right now, it's like, how do we continue to invest and make this a tremendous experience for our members, and how do we continue to grow our brand awareness? Because it's a very niche community, right? So figuring out how we can continue to grow our brand in front of the right people is something that we should continue to try to figure out. But yeah, look, it feels like we've won game 1 of a 1,000-game season. Like we've accomplished a lot. We have a lot to be proud of. We've gotten this off the ground. Our members are really enjoying their experience. There's still a lot of things to get better at, but there's so many more things that we want to accomplish. But it's like we got to take one game at a time.
It's like a football season, man. One game, still got 15 or however many left these days. So,
yeah.
Well, Christian, that's cool, man. I just, if you don't mind, I'll ask you one more question. Then, like, just thanks for your time. It's been really cool. Just like, so you're talking about the performance. This, like, maybe will tie back into what we were talking about earlier, but like some of the performance anxiety, maybe social anxiety. You said, like, how do you tackle that these days? What are you doing for yourself? I'm sure you stay active, but how do you combat it these days?
Yeah. Look, I think a lot of it comes from self-awareness, right? I think I had all these feelings of anxiety without understanding what they were and why they existed. And so a lot of work of investing in my own self-awareness and getting these root causes. I think one of the biggest catalysts to our growth as athletes was we were always so hyper self-aware of the things that we were doing well and the things that we weren't doing well, right? Like in baseball, right? Like you were always getting coached on, you always knew where your batting percentage was or what, whatever metrics that you had. Like you were so self-aware and, what was going on, what wasn't. And then you always had this regular time to continue to invest in improving those skill sets to be a better performer in your sport. Like we were always watching film as a quarterback, always watching film of our practices, of our games, always getting coached, if I threw an interception, I immediately knew, wow, that was a stupid mistake. How do I learn from that? We should try to create that same level of self-awareness around all areas of our lives and our lives. And so understanding, okay, I feel this anxiety. Why am I feeling this? Okay, I have a short temper with my kids. Why? Like, how do I invest in that self-awareness to understand what's going on, and then invest in a plan of like, how am I going to get better? How am I going to carve out the time to get better in those areas, whether it's going to have to talk to someone else or whatever is required. I mean, there's so many tools out there that invest in your own self-awareness and starting to establish kind of your starting line. So establishing your starting line, what motivates me, what are the things I'm struggling with, and then establish like, what is that finish line in a year? What are those things, those stepping stones that are going to help you get closer to where you want to be and how you want to operate and the things that you want to be better at personally in your business, whatever it is. Again, athletes, we thrive in structure, right? It's what we benefited from for so long. And you've got to figure out ways to continue to create that structure so you continue to grow and do the things that are meaningful, that you find meaningful in your life after sports.
Definitely. Yeah, the self-awareness, that's such an interesting topic that's come up on this a few times. And it's not easy, but it's definitely something that everybody has to, I don't know, just take a step back and lean on other people too, man. Yeah, because it's not easy to do by yourself. So
yeah, right, yeah. And I bet look, when you're in relationships, right? Like my spouse, like we talk about this stuff all the time. Like my kids, like you become very self-aware of the things that you are not good at or good at, and so yeah, so it does require you to lean on others, but yeah, for sure, man.
Definitely. Well, Christian, thanks, man. This is awesome. I appreciate you just talking a little bit about your career and just being open about it. And I think it's great what you're doing, man, because it's definitely, there's clearly a need, like we were saying before, for former athletes, and hopefully you're filling that gap. So where can people find you if they're curious about learning more?
Yeah. So my email's Christian, CHRSTIN at thepost.co. We have a website, www.thepost.co. You can find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, so pretty accessible.
Awesome. Yeah, that's how I found you. Your email. Shot you an email. So
yeah.
So thanks for answering it and for the time.
Yeah, of course.
It's just fun.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right, you got it.